Hi there, I'm Steve Best, the Howe Sound Marine Trails Steward for the Seacock Association of BC. I'm going to tell the story of the Sea to Sky Marine Trail, how it came to be, all the work that has gone into creating the trail you see today, and our plans for the future. Much of the focus will be on the work of SCA BC, the Seacock Association of BC, a member club of BC Marine Trails. SCA BC has partnered with BC Marine Trails in the creation and development of the Sea to Sky Trail, and has partnered with Recreation Sites and Trails BC in the development and maintenance of the trail. The idea of a marine trail in Howe Sound came to be in 2010, when Trans-Canada Trail, which already crossed Canada east-west, was extending their trail north-south, connecting Victoria to Tuktoyaktuk. When it came to linking the ferry terminal in Horseshoe Bay with the trailhead in Squamish, the coastline of Howe Sound was just too steep for a land trail, and the idea of a marine trail was born. Trans-Canada Trail partnered with BC Marine Trail Network Association, and it proved to be a marriage made in heaven. The current version of BC Marine Trails had only been in existence for a year or so. The Sea to Sky Marine Trail would be their first trail, and it would prove to be an example that any other marine trail would have to strive to match. BC Marine Trails provided the expertise to build a trail, and Trans-Canada Trail provided the political will to make it happen. It took 5 years to put the trail together. There were 3 provincial parks already providing camping in Howe Sound, but that left an awful lot of Howe Sound coastline without camping opportunities. The coastline of Howe Sound was combed for potential sites, and land ownership was investigated. In the end, 6 sites were identified and turned into provincial recreation sites. A highway and a rail line run up the east side of Howe Sound. So, unsurprisingly, all 6 sites are either on Gambier Island or the west side of Howe Sound. On June 14th, 2015, the trail had its grand opening, with the participation of the Squamish First Nation and the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia, along with Recreation Sites and Trails BC's District Recreation Officer, Alistair McCrone, MLA Jordan Sturdies, Trans-Canada Trail Board Chair Jim Bishop, and the gentleman in the blue and white shirt is Gordon McKeever. Gordon was brought aboard as a consultant by Trans-Canada Trail and was very instrumental in making the trail happen, dealing with First Nations and the various governmental bodies that surround Howe Sound. Sadly, Gordon died shortly after the opening of the trail, and he is sorely missed. The trail is made up of 7 main launch sites around the shores of Howe Sound, campsites at 3 already existing provincial parks: Plumper Cove Marine Park on Keats Island, Halkett Bay Marine Park on Gambier Island, Porto Cove Provincial Park on the highway halfway up the east coast of Howe Sound. Completing the trail were campsites at 6 newly created recreation sites. The 6 sites are Ramillies Channel on the east side of Gambier Island, This is one of the 2 sites with a good natural beach. And above the beach, a level terrace for camping, with more camping at the top of the beach or just above it. Bain Creek is the farthest site, on the west side of Howe Sound, just 4 kilometers north of Port Mellon. It was a boulder beach to begin with, but with some hard work by volunteers, a boat run was cleared. Here you see a chain hoist anchored to a tree being used to move boulders, and to the right, a couple of pry bars and a pickaxe. And the result is a boat run through the boulder field. A short access trail leads to a clearing beside a beautiful waterfall. A further trail leads up the hill to a rock ledge with a 180-degree view. Thornborough Channel, 6 kilometers up the coast from Bain. There's the landing on the right, and just to the west are some high rock bluffs. There's a cleared boat run just below the sign to make for a good landing. A trail leads from the site sign across a steep slope, with 2 tent sites carved out of the slope just off the trail. This is a full-grown cougar we encountered at Thornborough during our 2018 table delivery to this site, so you want to be wildlife aware at any of these sites. The trail continues across a creek and up the hill to the real feature of this site, the high rock bluffs. Which make for some awesome campsites with room for several tents. Islet View, another 6 kilometers along. Another boulder beach to start with. But more hard work by volunteers created another excellent boat run. Heading up from the boat run and past the site sign, there's a leveled tent pad beside the main clearing, and room for a couple of more tents in the main clearing itself. And there's the view. Zorro Bay is 4.5 kilometers further up the coast from Islet View. Zorro Bay is on the north side of a rocky headland sticking out from the Howe Sound shore. Zorro Bay has the best natural beach of the 6 sites. Because of its nice beach and proximity to Squamish, Zorro Bay sees more powerboat use than any other sites. A trail leads up the hill to a benchland where several tent sites were carved out. The most northerly site is Tantalus Landing, 10 kilometers up the coast from Zorro Bay, but only 4.5 kilometers from the Squamish waterfront. Tantalus was the most challenging site to land at. Volunteers moved large boulders to create a boat run, although some really large boulders remained at the top of the run. Coming in to land on the boat run at Tantalus, a set of steps leads to a trail that leads across a lovely creek past an alternate landing beach that's good at high tide. The trail carries on to the main clearing that can accommodate several tents and has a lovely rock outlook. At the time of the grand opening, all of the sites had places to land, site signs, and cleared tent pads with trails connecting them. In March of 2017, SCA-BC, the local kayak club, entered into a partnership agreement with Recreation Sites and Trails BC to develop and maintain the 6 newly created campsites. And in 2017, the first year of SCA-BC's stewardship, it was decided to put in bear-proof food caches, or bear bins, at all of the sites using volunteer labor. Nick Heath led our volunteer effort. He purchased steel job site toolboxes at Summit Tools, painted them green, and led teams out to the sites in July of 2017 to install them. Also in 2017, I retired, sold my house in North Vancouver, and moved to Squamish. In the fall of 2017, Nick recruited me as SCA-BC's first Howe Sound Marine Trail steward. I may have the title, but it started out very much as a mentorship, and to this day, Nick has remained very much a partner in everything we have accomplished in Howe Sound. We had to know what kind of use the sites were getting in order to decide what to do at which sites. Visitor logbooks were installed at all of the sites in the spring of 2018. Using clear plastic pelican cases mounted on signposts, we are making decisions based on feedback the logbooks are providing. At Tantalus Landing, this amazing table was built by a team led by Randy Chatterjee in spring of 2018 out of reclaimed wood on an existing concrete base. For the other 5 sites, picnic tables were built out of reclaimed cedar, stained, taken apart, and in August of 2018, they were reassembled on site. Tantalus Landing has a creek, with the boat run and food cache on one side, and the main camping area on the other. And the creek crossing could be tricky at times. In October of 2018, 2 logs which were found on site were moved into position using a hand-powered chain hoist. The following spring, decking was added, and there is now a nice log bridge across the creek. Our 6 recreation sites were small campgrounds just across Howe Sound from the largest metropolitan area in BC, and it was clear from the start that our most pressing need was to get a toilet at each site. In 2018, it was decided to start with Zorro Bay, and RSTBC's best backcountry contractor was hired to build a Toilet Tech composting toilet there. After several delays, the toilet finally went ahead in March of 2019. Back in 2015, SCA-BC had held a paddling film festival
to raise money for BC Marine Trails, raising over $2,000. In March of 2018, and again in 2019, SCA-BC has again put on the festival, now specifically as a fundraiser for the Howe Sound sites, raising over $4,000 in 2018 and over $6,500 in 2019.
Now that we had a toilet at Zorro, we anticipated more use, so we decided to go ahead in May of 2019 with a prototype of a tent platform. Meanwhile, Nick had come up with an idea for a new type of composting toilet. The first toilet at Zorro is pretty nice, but it was also pretty expensive, and it has moving parts which could break down. Together with architect Mick Allen, they came up with a prototype design for a composting toilet using recycling bins. Over the winter of 2019-2020, volunteers built a toilet that we're hoping will be a prototype for toilets at other marine trail sites. But the project took a lot of trips to the site and a lot of volunteer hours. We decided projects this complex needed to be contractor built. A powerful windstorm in February of 2019 scattered debris around the shores of Howe Sound. On April 10th and 11th, SCA-BC participated in a Howe Sound cleanup with a crew of volunteers camping out at Zorro Bay. 4 boatloads of debris and garbage were removed, mostly from Zorro Bay and Rimilly's Channel. When COVID-19 hit in 2020, all other club activity ground to a halt, but not in Howe Sound. We had decided to go ahead with composting toilets at our remaining 4 sites. When hoped for RSTBC capital funding didn't come through, we decided to go ahead anyway, with our $5,000 management budget from RSTBC, $2,000 from BC Marine Trails, an $18,000 grant from Trans-Canada Trail, and the remainder from SCA-BC's legacy funds. The Toilet Tech composting toilet at Zorro Bay had moving parts that could break down, and Nick's Bain Creek composting toilet was still an unproven prototype. We needed something tried and true. We took a 2-vault concept that had been developed on the Appalachian Trail and was being used on the Sunshine Coast Trail, and redesigned it. We hired the same backcountry contractor who built the Zorro Bay toilet to build them, and by November we had 4 new composting toilets, a toilet at each of our sites. This toilet design is now being used at another BC Marine Trail site at Freedom Point in the Discovery Islands. While on site at Tantalus, the crew and I worked on a rock stairway to access a new camping area just above the main clearing. The contractor used his chainsaw to clear a tent site at the top. It's called the Penthouse. While he was at Islet View, the contractor used his chainsaw skills to carve out a trail to a new camping area called the Plateau. Volunteers then added steps in the trail and leveled 2 new tent pads. And at Thornborough, the contractor returned to the site to build a log bridge across the creek. All possible tent pads on level ground at our sites had already been developed, so if we wanted to add capacity at any of our sites, the future would be tent platforms. While the 4 toilets were being completed, a team of volunteers built our second tent platform, this time on the high rock bluff at Thornborough Channel. The 4 new toilets need wood shavings added to help them compost, so the next development in Howe Sound was the establishment of the Howe Sound team, with site stewards recruited for each of the 6 recreation sites that SCA-BC looks after. The site stewards and their teams have carried out spring, summer, and fall site inspections at their sites, as well as work parties at some of the sites. In 2021, the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District came through with a $10,000 grant to stimulate the local economy and improve tourism infrastructure. The same backcountry contractor who built our composting toilets built 3 tent platforms and a second table at Zorro Bay. It looked like some of our visitor logbook cases were leaking, with the logbooks getting soaked and mildewed. In response, Deb Merchant's husband, Richard, built these amazing little houses for the logbooks. Here you see one installed at Tantalus Landing. Unlike the previous cases, these are very user-friendly, and they're doing a great job of keeping the logbooks dry. In 2021, Murray Sovereign, owner of Valhalla Pier Outfitters in Squamish, donated $9,000 from his Valhalla Squamish Trail Fund toward tent platforms at 2 sites on the Sea to Sky Marine Trail. We had 2 suppliers mill cedar for 5 platforms, and in September of 2021, we delivered the lumber for 3 10-foot by 10-foot platforms to Tantalus Landing and for 2 12-foot by 12-foot platforms to Islet View. Nasty weather held up construction until spring, but in April and May of 2022, we built the 3 platforms at Tantalus Landing. And in July, we built 2 at Islet View. – 2023 started with the appearance of a stone masonry hot pool on site at Tantalus Landing, complete with water piped in from the creek and a wood-fired water heater. While the hot pool was kind of cool, it was unsanctioned, non-conforming, and would have attracted unwelcome activity like jet skis, loud music, and chainsaws. And public hot pools have to meet all kinds of regulations that this pool could never meet. In April, the RSTBC Recreation Officer, RSTBC Trail Crew Lead, and 2 SCA-BC volunteers visited the site and dismantled the pool and piping. The water heater was subsequently removed from the site by the unknown builder. Back in November of 2022, we applied for a Destination BC grant, and then, in the spring, we received a 30% matching grant from Trans-Canada Trail. While waiting to hear about the first grant, we had the opportunity to purchase enough yellow cedar for 5 tent platforms, 2 to go at Zorro Bay and 3 at Thornborough Channel. We had it delivered to the Ministry of Forest Works Yard in Squamish, where we cut it to size and stacked it, waiting for us. RSTBC hired a trail crew in 2023, and we put them to good use, camping overnight at Tantalus Landing in May to clear the massive boulders at the top of the boat run, and camping out in August at Zorro Bay, where they built an access trail to the site for the new tent platforms. Meanwhile, Philip Kubik, site steward for Bain Creek, has been busy with his site. He and his team have built steps up the hill, cleared a new boat run in a location where it's easier to get your kayak up the bank, built a rack to store your kayak on, and cleared the mess left when a wildfire crew felled a massive danger tree. His team has included Ken Bigelow, who showed his amazing chainsaw skills building this log bridge across the creek at Bain, completely from materials found on site. Ken, who is a director with BC Marine Trails, had already volunteered to help with the maintenance of the toilet at Zorro Bay, and is now stepping up to take over as site steward for Thornborough Channel, taking over from Kevin Hall. Welcome aboard, Ken. Apodaca Provincial Park is a little provincial park on the southeast shore of Bowen Island that had lain dormant since it was created in 1952. Since 2010, BC Marine Trails and SCA-BC have been working to bring it online as a marine trail site. Getting a concept plan approved, having an archaeological impact assessment carried out, having a contractor build an access trail up the hill from the beach to the upland tent platform sites, and having cedar milled for 4 tent platforms. In November of 2022, BC Parks delivered the lumber and other materials to the top of this cliff at the edge of the site by barge and crane. BC Parks staff moved some of the material up to the site, and volunteers from SCA-BC and Club Locarno carried up the rest. In April, BC Parks staff built a green throne toilet, framed and decked 2 tent platforms, while volunteers framed 2 more platforms. In May, volunteers then finished the decking on the remaining 2 platforms. In August, BC Parks installed signage and a kayak rack, and we are just waiting for Parks to install a signage kiosk. After 13 years of lobbying, funding, and volunteer labor, this campsite is finally a reality, although it remains a day-use site until officially opened for camping by BC Parks with a First Nations opening ceremony. And that Destination BC grant we were waiting to hear about? Well, it's just been announced that we did get it. Together with the 30% matching grant from Trans-Canada Trail and $3,000 from a film festival put on by Valhalla Pure, it will allow us to hire backcountry contractors to build the 5 tent platforms at Zorro Bay and Thornborough Channel, and to replace our steel food caches, which are rusting out after 6 years, with new aluminum ones. On a final note, this November, Trans-Canada Trail had their annual convention, this time in Vancouver. On November 16th, Nick and I met with a busload of board members and staff at Porto Cove and shared with them all the good work their funding has made possible. That brings us up to date in Howe Sound. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about all the work that the Sea Kayak Association of BC and BC Marine Trails have been doing on the Sea to Sky Marine Trail.